Today's webinar is on assessments, something that we're seeing increasing demand for, and I think it's pretty natural because there's a pretty large portion of the Lawson customer base that implemented 15 to 20 years ago, and it's a natural time to start looking at re-educating your workforce and looking at the functionality that has been there with that distance from implementation. So let me first start by introducing today's presenters.
That's what happens when we give you the clicker.
Ms. Cindi Brackins, Stephanie Kowal, Melissa Olson. These are some of the best consultants I've ever had a chance to work with. And there's tremendous amounts of experience here, but not too many years, right? And all of them, before they joined the consulting ranks, worked on the client side as business owners for HR, supply chain, and finance. And I think it's a very important thing in terms of the perspective they bring, not just to general consulting, but when they do these assessments. And I think it's also important to point out that we have a very large and diverse skill set in our organization. Definitely not the only folks that go out there and do assessments, but maybe some of the folks that enjoy doing them the most, that have the most passion for. So let's talk about dancing hamsters. Let's talk about RPI's assessment approach. You want to take that one, Stephanie?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
So really, we kick off these assessments by doing a discovery. So we work with your organization. We have these sessions where we meet with each team. So in supply chain, I'm meeting from everyone from the warehouse staff to receiving to purchasing to contracts to your MMIS team, and I'm doing my best to just embed myself into your everyday life in those 2 to 3 day sessions. So it's a lot of work just trying to build a relationship and get the team comfortable with just sharing whatever they can about their current processes. We also take some time to look into your configurations. So they could have been set up many, many years ago, and they're not ever looked at. You kind of forget what's there. So we do our best to dig in deep and see what we can find to provide some value back to you. While we're on site, oftentimes we're also able to provide some quick hits. So some of your staff may be running some custom queries to try to find this information, like referencing the price that was on the PO and what you're invoiced for, and now there's a new report for that, MA 278. So whatever we can do to provide value while we're there, we do. So from there, we take all that information back and we provide you some recommendations for your future state. And when we go back and present these to you, we're looking to have that collaborative discussion and help you build a roadmap for 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, so and generally we like to kick off and end these assessments with your leadership team, any of your executives, because we want to go in with that strategic what your future state should be, or how to scale your business to where it needs to be in 3 to 5 years. So in listening to your organization's interviews, your team's interviews, we're not only saying these quick hits that we can take care of today to kind of stop the bleeding, but what can we do for future state based on what your organization's directives are. So sometimes there's an idea of what your on-the-ground team thinks that they need, and we want to look at that and marry it with what your executive leadership they would like to go. So that's, I think, a really important
And I think that's
piece
a
of
source for a lot of them is it's certainly something that I come across a lot when we talk to customers, the sense that, I want something, and I'm being told that it's either not possible or difficult to get. And I've heard this is an ERP system. I'm sure that you can get it out of Lawson. So, and oftentimes you can, right? It's it might be a process issue sometimes, not just a knowledge one. So let's talk about some of the keys to having a great assessment. I think it's more than just about Lawson.
Right. So as Keith talked about earlier, all of us have deep knowledge as clients. So we've all walked in your shoes. We've all dealt with the troubleshooting and the errors and the organization process issues that general HR teams or financial teams or procurement teams may have. So in taking that and having the expertise that we have around all of the systems functionality, the tools that can help optimize all of your processes, as well as what's coming. All of us are very embedded with Lawson's roadmap, and we study throughout the year, keep up on any kind of regulations or federal reporting issues that need to happen. Where's the system going? Are there new modules that will be coming out? This is huge now with version 11 in both financials and supply chain, and the continuation of the version 11 build out on HCM. So staying on top of that and letting you know what's coming so you can make the best decisions of where your organization needs to go and how it can better leverage the Infor tools.
Absolutely.
Also, just to chime in and give some examples and some information about some Lawson processes that we've seen and the way that we use new functionality, which the users perhaps aren't aware of quite yet. I've seen in the financial area, the clients are typically having to do very manual reconciliations of their prepaid expenses. We now know there's a new tool coming, Reconciliation Management, in version 11 that will allow you to do all of those prepaid schedules online in Lawson, create your entries, and you can monitor it there. So that's one of those places where we come into play, where we say, okay, yeah, we know the old way of doing it. There was a couple of pieces of functionality in Lawson. You could accomplish some of that in a sort of automated way, not really automated, and this new tool in the future will solve that. So that's where we can give you a roadmap to where you might want to move forward. Also, I'm quite often asked, why do I like doing assessments?
Why do you like doing it?
Why do I like doing assessments? I like them because I like helping people. It also helps me as a consultant because I learn all the different ways that many other clients are accomplishing those same tasks. And
Yes.
it gives me ideas for, oh, I've seen so-and-so do that this way. Might that work here? All systems can't accomplish every need, and sometimes you need workarounds. So that's where it helps me as a consultant learn more about each individual.
I remember something you said that I liked a lot because often we talk about best practices and leading practices and so forth, but you described it as sharing the experience of how other clients have handled things and what the pluses and minuses have been, and then finding the right happy medium for that client. It's not a one size fits all, and I think it's our team very much does not try to impose this is the right way type attitude. I mean,
You get that, what are best practices? And that's,
all
the
the time.
leading question all the time.
Yes.
And we can't say best practices.
Tell me now.
Right. There's what works for an organization that's 3,000 to 5,000 people will not work for an organization under 1,000 people. So healthcare, we do a lot of healthcare, but on public sector or private organizations, same things don't apply. So it's best practices by vertical, but also, by where do you want to go? What does your strategic vision include? And how can we leverage the experience that we have to kind of get you there?
Which I think ties also into our next slide, because the needs of different organizations, even in the same industry, might not be the same. What those gaps are vary from client to client. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Awesome.
Quite often, people say, "Well, what can I get from an assessment? Why might I need to do an assessment?" Typically, the same people that implemented your system is not the team that's there now, particularly if you've been a long-time Lawson user. And as time goes by, those people leave the organization. So does that knowledge leave the organization about key decisions that were made about how your structure is set up and processes are. So we come in, we identify what your knowledge gaps are, if you need training, if you don't need training. Perhaps there's some quick hit kind of things we can do while we're on site and let you, quickly put those into process, into effect. Just some examples of some things that we kind of see is many people, they'll implement Lawson and they say, okay, this is going to be an optimization after we go live. That just never, ever happens. They
Yes.
just don't have the resources to put to it, and that gets kind of pushed to the side, and people forget about that functionality. So we make sure that we make sure you're aware of those pieces of functionality. And just one key thing to say is the assessment's not all negative. There are positive
You're doing
things.
everything wrong.
There are positive things, and we do point that out, that you are using best practice in our assessment documentation that does come. So it's not all negative.
And that's a perspective, that's a perspective that we can bring to the table, right? Because you don't know how you compare to your industry peers,
Right.
but we have visibility into that.
Right. I remember one assessment that I did that they were above and beyond pretty much every other client I've gone to. I'd only been to one, it was actually a company I'd worked for, had only done just as much technically in automation and approvals that this organization did. And I'm like, wow, I've got nothing for you for the technical or optimization side. There's a couple of things you can implement that you haven't, but they were, a stellar example of what you should be doing and how you should be using your technical resources to help support your functional needs. So, and then I think another thing I like to do is just go through all of the forms that Lawson has, because sometimes your people aren't aware that there are forms out there that they're not using, that they can track things, reports that they didn't realize are out of the box. And so that's almost like a little mini training within the assessment that they learn about new things that they are able to use.
It's a constantly evolving process. And I just want to hit up again what you were saying in terms of there's existing process gaps potentially and knowledge gaps. There's also an understanding on what is on Infor's roadmap, Recon and so forth, where it might affect what the solutions you put in place today are, third party or process wise. So let's look at, another key I think here is producing actionable recommendations. You don't want pie in the sky, $1 million to implement this stuff to fix everything. You gotta buy all the software. It's the only way it'll ever get fixed.
So during our assessments, when we're providing you that document to view, we're following a traffic light approach. So by each module, or we're going over some specific processes or setup, and we're basically giving you feedback through this pretty straightforward feedback loop. So green is good, your process is working well. It doesn't mean that we're not going to give you feedback on how to take it to the next level there. Satisfactory has a yellow exclamation, and this is to call out, although the process is working, it's just not efficient. It needs to become a little bit more efficient, and we'll have some feedback there for you. And then we have a big red X that it's unsatisfactory. So this needs some work. So for supply chain financials, this is often your R&I. It's really, really high. Almost all the time, we're giving out that red X for R&I.
Or even regulatory things on the HCM side, if you're not compliant, is another big red X that you need to hit right away.
So we're just not giving you this feedback through this traffic light and just letting you know something's not working well. We're going to give you that detailed feedback. So again, this is separated by module or business practice, and then we go deep into each area. And oftentimes, I'll refer you to way more detail in the appendix area. So this document for supply chain alone could be anywhere from 30 to 70 pages, depending on what kind of feedback we're giving back.
And I think aside from just the diagnosis of these are the problems, we also try to, we've mentioned a couple times this concept of quick hits. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Sure. These quick hits can be anything like I was mentioning earlier. You're running this custom query to find the differences in PO price and invoice price, and there's a really great report that Infor Lawson offers to you. It's MA 278. So these are things that we're on site and we're like, oh great, you should check out this report. I think that's going to fit what you need just fine. And then there's some others where it could be that
It could be an audit flag.
Exactly.
Just turn it on.
Just turn it on. Very straightforward. So again, these are things that we're delivering while we're on site, but when we're giving you this document, we're summing all that up together so you don't lose track of all the things that was shared with you. So in some of these feedback loops, we may need to provide a little bit more detail. So we're going to map out an example of how that functionality would work, because some things in Lawson work really well out of the box and you don't need to modify much, but others have a business process behind it, and you have to think creatively. So what's the best way to get what you need out of the system? And it's not necessarily that it's something difficult and complicated, but it needs a process behind it that's documented. And a lot of organizations struggle with that, just trying to find the best way and the best resource to tie all those pieces together. And another thing I really, really like about these assessments is especially when we're able to do them across all modules, we have such a strong team here that I may not have experience with one area as strong as I'd like, and I can reach out to other consultants as part of the team. Cindi and I work together a lot, going over matching, since that covers both of our sides. So we work not just collaboratively with your team, with our own team, to just make sure that we're giving you the right feedback that you need.
Yeah, there's a lot of awesome people that know what they're doing. It's a lot of fun sometimes. So let's talk. So we talked a little bit about some of the, recommendations and the assessment of the current state, the diagnosis. Let's talk about the roadmap. You want to take that?
I'll take that, and just kind of to piggyback on some of those recommendations, we were talking a lot about resources, and that is one of the recommendations that we like to put in there as well. If your team needs a new resource, I think there's always a business case for having another analyst or having one other FTE on your team, and you guys aren't able to make that business case. We can back it up with, this is what's going on, this is what your team is supporting, and there's clearly more work. You've got one person that is doing 1.5 FTE of work, and if you lose them in the dreaded bust scenario, you've got 75% of your process that you don't have anybody to do. So if you need somebody to back up, we see those areas and we make those recommendations to you.
I have to ask what the dreaded bust scenario is.
If somebody gets hit by a bullet bus or wins the lottery, we can be optimistic. If they win the lottery and they're like, peace out, I'm not coming back tomorrow, then you need somebody that can back up that person, somebody that has we talk a lot about positions being chairs, not necessarily people. And people look at those positions as people. So-and-so has the knowledge to do all of this stuff. But if another person were in that chair, we wouldn't give that person that knowledge.
Yes.
So that's a very important thing to be able to decouple and understand what that position does and have somebody to be able to back up that position if that person were to win the lottery or go on maternity leave or any other issue that they're not there to support your organization. So I just kind of wanted to bring that up because it's not only processes that affect your organization in supporting Lawson, but it's your people and it's the FTEs and the burnout potentially that can cause you to lose efficiencies. The project guidance here we've got is a 3-year roadmap, and those quick hits we were mentioning always come in that first year. What can you do in the next 2 to 3 months on your own without any extra resources? Maybe what can you do in 6 months that you may need to bring a partner on, a consulting partner to help you get through maybe some automated reporting, bursted reporting, some big processes like Stephanie was mentioning. And then your second year is let's bring on some more modules potentially. Let's open up some self-services that maybe you don't have, RQC or EMSS. And then third year or third to fifth year is generally your big bang. Your let's go to global HR is your let's upgrade to version 11 financials and supply chain. The things that are going to be taking a lot more resources and a lot more planning to get done. And sometimes it may just be something process-wise like combining 2 or 3 companies into one company and changing those chart of accounts and cost centers because you realize everybody really does need to be under one company, potentially with multiple EINs, but you are not really terminating them. You're needing to transfer them, or you need to pay overtime on them. That seems to be a big case that I'm starting to see now a lot, where healthcare is bringing on a bunch of affiliates and they're trying to keep everybody as their own entity, but they realize they do need to start sharing these resources. So what does that mean for their organization structure setup? So that's a really daunting project that can be done, in that roadmap that we can help you.
I think the roadmap, one of the things to try to understand is some things that make sense to fix now, even if you have plans for a bigger project later.
Right.
You can automate certain processes in S3, even if you have global HR in your roadmap. You don't have to wait. And they might be quick hits, you can do them. Other things make sense to do. For example, if you want to do a financial company reorg and you're planning on version 11, then it makes a lot of sense to do those two at the same time. And I think that's one thing we bring to the table. I remember you sharing a story about a client a few months ago where the way that it was structured was basically to reduce, you found they had a lot of manual processes. And so all the quick hit stuff and even the medium term stuff was about automating those to free up the resources to be able to dedicate to those future projects. And I remember thinking that was a really nifty approach. You guys want to add anything to the project roadmap?
No, I think we're good.
Uh-oh. What do we have here? I think we may have a cameo from Mr. Richard Stout. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. Thank you.
Come on in, Richard.
Thank you, Keith. Thanks for inviting me to crash your presentation because I want everybody to know that we also recommend a technical assessment.
Tech matters too.
Tech matters too. We recommend a technical assessment in conjunction with a business process review. And our technical assessment methodology fits the same mold as the overall assessment. And first, we want to look at where you are today. Let us help you gain better visibility in your existing solution. One of the deliverables that will come out of this engagement is a diagram of the current environment. We'll inventory all the products in place along with their versions, look to list out interfaces and customizations, and perform a consistency check of the test environment. And in addition to looking at the technology itself, we want to look at how your ERP management group is structured. Take a look at the organization, staffing, the skills matrix, and look at your backup and disaster recovery preparedness plans. Once we've established the baseline, where you are, that's when we want to move into where do you want to be going forward. And maybe you've got goals such as system standardization or improving server performance, or even just bringing the ERP management group and super users closer together to achieve your shared goals. And once we've established what the optimal future state is, we're going to prioritize leveraging existing technology and software over buying new solutions when we're crafting an approach. We'll help identify automation opportunities, provide guidance on best practices for ongoing development efforts, such as standardization of RISE technology. And a lot of our customers have recently completed a Lawson 10X upgrade. They're looking to stabilize going into 2017, and I think this is a great time for self-reflection. And I'd just say I'd like to end by saying let a technical assessment now become your medium-term roadmap leading up to your next major project. Maybe that's GHR implementation, or just getting prepared and positioning for Infor XI.
And I think it gives you that peace of mind knowing that you can basically, your servers, your database, everything is ready to support the next phase. Or, do you need to do some cleanups? Maybe that's why your system's so slow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a lot of very, very sophisticated, very smart customers. And
Our favorite customers.
They are our favorite customers.
Yes.
And for some of them, the biggest thing that they get out of an assessment is matching up what their solution is compared to the rest of the industry. That our customers want to know that they're not reinventing the wheel, that they're not going too far out of mainstream. If the rest of the customers have found a similar solution, it's good to know what that is, and I think we can bring that insight. That's where we can add a lot of value.
And you talked about sort of that go forward RISE assessment. Obviously, if you've already upgraded, you have things in place, point-to-point integrations and so forth. But you may have them on technologies that you want to consider migrating. You want to pick the ones that are going to be easy to support. I know we spoke with a customer. We spoke with several customers that are on older, even non-Lawson systems, and they have a lot of iSeries, RPG type customizations, and those resources have become harder to find. You know, they're not young guys graduating college getting into doing RPG programming. So, you know, I think that especially customers with those experiences, they want to make sure that the technologies they're quote unquote betting on are going to be the ones that 5 years, 10 years from now, they can get resources, because you want to make sure you can replace the person in that chair.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, development technology, sometimes there's a bit of a horse race, and there's winners and losers, and I think we can help you standardize on a set of technologies that's going to be maintainable and easy to find resources for moving forward, and aligns well with the direction of the software vendor.
Yes, I think you were on the definitely the Microsoft stack bandwagon before the whole industry, and now I've seen everybody sort of trending towards it, including Infor. So that was a good pick. So maybe potentially some of our attendees have some questions.
We do, and so the first question is, heard a lot of great things by this team here. Is this the team that would do my assessment?
So, you know, I think it depends. Obviously, we're a large company. I would say that these are some of the team members that like doing assessments, and you know, you add a lot of value when you engage in things that you have a passion for doing. So typically, yes, these would be the team members that would work on assessments. Primary team members for HCM, supply chain, finance, and tech. You can stick around, man.
Okay.
All right.
You should join us.
Mixed
So.
signals.
The next question I have is,
Yeah.
I have a limited budget,
There you go.
but I really see the value. How could this work for me?
So this is something that obviously can scale up or down. The amount of time that we spend affects the level that we can dig into and the amount of depth of deliverables we can produce. But we've done some of these as quick hits. You know, go on site, maximize our time, try to deliver some immediate value. Obviously, if you want the detailed process documentation, that takes a little bit more effort. But that's something we can cater to per customer.
This is kind of a multi-part question, but you know, we're doing well as an organization, and but I know we could do so much more. How can I convince my executive team that this is of value and that this will take us to a new level?
Simple. Call Bill Getty and engage his team. No, I think that obviously we can help you make the business case. I think one of the things that we're looking where this fits in with our overall model is to build that relationship, right? So once you engage with these consultants to do that assessment and they become familiar with their system, they become invaluable for future advisory opportunities and other projects you're looking to do, because now you've built that relationship. You not only have those recommendations, but we have an understanding of what your system looks like and what the intent of that roadmap was, you know, however it may change over time.
So this last one is like a slow pitch softball, and I think I can answer it.
Sure.
But would RPI help me construct the business case to conduct an assessment? And I'll tell you the answer we often say is a resounding yes. All you need to do is really reach out to one of our sales reps. They're prepared. They can help you see examples, previous assessments we've done, introduce you to our team. We can get on a conference call, so it's absolutely something we can help you do to put the business case in front of your team to ensure that you could take your organization to the next level in the coming years.
Absolutely. So I want to thank all of you for attending this webinar. We hope you found it informative.